So the big question is this: how do ordinary people like us that weren't born into money create true financial freedom, take back control of our lives, and live a life full of purpose, meaning, and fulfillment? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Join me and follow along as I learn, apply, and share the strategies that the wealthy know and use that the rest of us weren't taught to create true financial freedom. My name is David Bell, and welcome to Pocket Mastermind. Elzie, welcome to the Pocket Mastermind podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for having me. I'm doing well.
You're welcome. Today I'm recording a bunch of episodes and from all different parts of the world. So the first one today was Australia, got you in the States, and a couple more from the States later on. So it's a global experience for me today.
I got it. Well, you're working through it.
It's good to get, and we were just chatting beforehand, it's good to get the insight and experiences of people from different parts of the world with everything that's going on right now. So yeah, it's really good. So today we're going to talk a bit kind of about mindset, and but before we do that, I want to kind of learn a bit more about you and what led you to your journey and your podcast, Enterprise Now, and everything. And you know, you're a speaker and you're a writer and all of this stuff. And what kind of where's your journey been to where you are now talking to me?
Yeah, so in my life story in 2 minutes, I grew up in a small town. When I say small, I mean small, right? No stoplights, one grocery store, one gas station type town where everybody knew everybody. And so it was a really, really cool upbringing. You know, I played outside all the time, went to school, just the normal, childhood. So grew up. Went to school for electronics technology, became an electrical engineer for some time, worked my way up or down to upper management, did that for a season, and really just got tired of it. Wanted to take the cap off of what I could earn, take the cap of creativity off of creativity. So I decided to strike out on my own, and I wanted to start a podcast where I can meet bright business people and learn from them. I didn't want to read it in a book. I didn't want to read how to be an entrepreneur from, written by so-and-so. I wanted to learn from actual entrepreneurs who were doing it. And so I started the podcast, and initially the plan was to start this internet radio station. And my podcast was just going to be one of the shows on the station. And we were going to talk business 24/7 from all over across the world. And what happened was I ran across an actual podcast, and I fell in love with the medium, and I started, because I'm a planner, I started doing research on where the medium had been, where it was at the time, and where it was going. And I felt like podcasting was going to, in the next 4 to 5 years, was going to explode. And so I shut down the internet radio station and focused on my podcast, 100%. And I would have these post interviews, and people would say to me things like, and you got to remember, David, this was before everybody had a podcast, right? So it was still kind of a novelty. They would say, wow, Elzie, it's really cool that you have this podcast. And, they would say, I wish I could do a podcast, but I don't know where to start, or I don't know what I would talk about, or I don't understand the tech. And one day I got smart and I said, I know how to start a podcast. I started this one. Why don't I help you start your podcast? You pay me money and everybody wins. And that's kind of how the agency piece of Enterprise Now was born. And over the years, I would add in different objections as services to my business. And recently, I'm transitioning my business away from Enterprise Now into Podcast Town, offering the same services, just moving both the podcast and all of our services under the Podcast Town banner.
So what led to the change?
Well, funny story, David. I was brainstorming one day, thinking about what can I do to serve people, and I came up with the idea I would start a group coaching program. And so I was telling my business coach about it, and he's like, it's a great idea. You should do that. But remember, Elzie, keep it simple. And so I half took his advice. I did the group coaching program, but I did not keep it simple. It turned into a complete rebrand of my entire company, right? I wanted to give the group a name, and then one thing led to another, and my coach is like, Podcast Town is the brand. And I said to him, I said, what do you mean? He's like, Podcast Town is the brand. He said, when I hear Podcast Town, I know what that means. And after about 2 or 3 sessions of kind of me trying to convince him to change his advice, I finally gave in and said, okay, Podcast Town is the brand.
It must be quite a big change, though, a big undertaking to go from something you've been working on for quite a long time to now moving across to start again. What's that experience been like?
Yeah, that's what I told him. But he had no sympathy. He's like, suck it up, Buttercup. Podcast Town is the brand. Yeah, it's been a shift, but I'm glad I did it because he was right. Podcast Town is a really solid brand, and instead of having the Enterprise Now podcast, now I'm launching 2 podcasts in its place.
Definitely not keeping it simple, no.
Of course. but I think long term it was a really, really, really good move. It was, to your point, it's hard to take your baby and change and move in a different direction, but I think that's what makes entrepreneurship fun, and that's what makes entrepreneurship cool because of those changes. You can make adjustments and change when those changes are needed.
And so since when you originally started and obviously progressed and as the whole medium has progressed as well, what are the big lessons you've learned along your journey, whether it be as an entrepreneur but also as a podcaster?
Ironically, they're almost one and the same, right? Podcasting is very, very similar to running a business. You have to identify your target market. You have to understand what makes you unique. You have to understand what is your unique proposition. You have a budget. It's almost the exact same. So some of the things that I've learned over the years is the only constant is change. One minute it looks like the medium is going this direction, and then Joe Rogan happens. Yeah. And then Michelle Obama launches a podcast, and it just shakes up the entire industry. And it's like, oh, okay, this is the direction it's going. So I think, again, just being malleable, being able to make adjustments and change and shift, which is one of the advantages of being small, right? Is because I can look at the market and say, oh, it's going this direction, and then make that shift. Whereas the bigger guys, they're committed to whatever direction they're going, and so they could just kind of have to watch it fall apart, as we've seen. I won't mention the companies by name, but there's some certain companies who have staked their claim in a certain direction, and it hasn't worked out, and they can't just shift and change. So that's one thing that I've learned is being adaptable and able and willing to shift and change as the medium continues to mature, which is the positive of it, right? I mean, podcasting is still in its infancy. It hasn't even established industry-wide norms and things like that. So that is really exciting to be a part of it.
And that's a good reminder, because I think sometimes you think that because it has been around a while, but I think it was kind of a spin-off of radio shows and various other stuff in the early days, right? And then a few really early adopters, and now it's become quite popular, and the barrier to entry is lower, and you can start it with a wide range of, from using your mobile phone to decent mics or whatever, and there's a whole mix in between, and lots of people, myself included, started one over this year, particularly with like COVID and everything happening. I think a lot of people were sat around thinking, well, now's a good time to do this stuff, and so it makes it, I think it's easy to feel in the moment that maybe it's more mature and further progressed than it actually is, and it's easy to forget that really it's still very, very early days if you compare it to TV, radio, and any other medium.
Oh yeah, for sure. And so it's people like you, David, that made it so hard for me to get equipment back in the early part of the year. I would have a client and I would go and try to order a microphone or really even a headset, and I just could not find them. And it was crazy, again, good at the same time, is because it's like, okay, a lot of people are getting into the medium, so that's encouraging. But at the same time, because of you, David, I couldn't find equipment anywhere.
I got in really early, but I started to plan this around the end of last year, and so
Okay,
I kind of bought the gear in January. I was lucky
got
because
it.
I had the plan. I think a lot of other people around March time probably ran into some shortages. I did with gym equipment because suddenly my gym was closed and I needed to train at home, and everybody had bought a pull-up bar.
Hmm.
They didn't exist, right? So I think the same kind of thing probably happened with podcast gear.
Yep.
What have been some of the big personal challenges and things that you've had to overcome on your journey, and kind of what approach have you taken to overcoming those? Because I think, as we talk now, like lots of people have started a podcast. It all sounds all great fun. We'll start a podcast, but after a while, you probably want to start to think about, well, how do I make this popular and start growing it, and it can be challenging, and like with everything, it comes down to your mindset and your approach. So how have you approached your own, your own journey, your ups and the downs, and are there any moments that you can talk about where you kind of like had to push through, or?
Yeah, those moments come more than I would like to admit. But I think you talk about mindset, and you talk about just having the right mission and objective. For me, entrepreneurship is a calling. I'm not doing this because I wanted to be a quadrillionaire, right? I'm not doing it because I want to be famous or because I want the glamour. I am literally doing this because I'm called to do this. And when you're called to do something, you're unstoppable. There's nothing that could happen that can deter you because you're called to do this. And so my mindset is, if I have to make an adjustment, if I have to make a shift or a change, all right, let's make a shift and a change and the adjustment, because what other options are there? I'm number one, I'm built for this, and number two, I'm not going anywhere, and I'm in it for the long haul. So, quitting never really crosses my mind. It's more like, okay, maybe it is going to take a little bit longer, but my mindset is just pressing until I get the mark. I mean, there's no other option. It's almost like I'm a basketball guy, so I'm watching the Eastern Conference Finals, and nobody thought that the Miami Heat would be in the NBA Finals this year, including myself. But they have this determination, this unwavering belief in themselves that they don't care what anybody says, they are going to accomplish their goal. That's me to the T. It's like I'm the underdog. Nobody thought that I would be here. Nobody thinks that I'm going to do the things that I'm going to do. But yet I have this unwavering belief in myself, not because I'm special, but because I'm called, that I'm going to achieve the goal. So to answer your question, entrepreneurship is very difficult. Mentally, it's difficult physically, and it's difficult financially. And I think you really have to, again, in my opinion, you have to be called for it, because it's not for the faint of heart. And you have to have a solid plan on how you're going to accomplish your goals. And every single day you wake up and you chip away at it, and you do the little things, the things that aren't glamorous, that show up in the long run.
And what's your on that subject? And I think it's something that I think is very important. Is what's your approach to goal setting and planning? How frequently do you review goals, set goals? What's your process? Because I'm something I'm really passionate about, and the reason of setting up the Pocket Mastermind in the first place was just a sheer lack of life skills that gets taught to all of us throughout school and through life. Right? When we're not really ever taught to set any goals other than, I know, go to college or whatever it is, and then what? You fall off a cliff. Really, there's no real plan in place, and money management and emotional regulation. These kind of core functionalities that or skills that we're not given, and so one of those areas, really, the starting point is goal setting and planning. So interested if you can share your approach to that.
Yep. So I typically do a 1, 3, and 5 year goals. And then what I do is I work my way backwards. So I'll have an overarching goal. For example, let's say it's start a podcast. And then I work my way backwards and really down to the actions. What actions do I need to take every quarter, every month, every week, and every day? And so I have my top 3. And if my action on a day-to-day basis does not align with that goal, then I don't do it. You know, if I wasn't in the podcast industry, I wouldn't be doing a podcast right now because that wouldn't be a part of my overall goal, right? So I literally break it all the way down to my daily actions, and every single hour needs to be aligned with one of those goals. If it's not, then I don't do it.
That's good. And how do you then, on a weekly basis, are you reviewing your weekly, daily? How do you go about reviewing the kind of the short term stuff?
Yep, I typically review those weekly. So on a Friday, Thursday, Friday, I look at the week before, and I kind of evaluate. Okay, I didn't get this done. I didn't get this done, and then I kind of evaluate. Well, why was I too busy, or was it really not in alignment with the overall goal, or was it because whatever the reason, I identify that, I analyze it, and then I correct it for the next week. So by Thursday, Friday, my next week is already set down to the hour, from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. interview with David, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. doing this, and making sure, again, that everything is in alignment with those top goals. Otherwise, I don't do it. So I'm evaluating those weekly, and then monthly, and then quarterly. So if I get to the end of the quarter and there's a lot of circles on my list of things that I either didn't get to or didn't get accomplished, then one of two things: either it wasn't in alignment in the first place, or there's something in me that I need to correct. Maybe it's a skill that I need to build, or maybe it's an area I need coaching on, or maybe there's a lack somewhere that things that I'm identifying as important for some reason aren't getting done, and that's how I know, okay, there's a gap there. I need to get help, either get help with it or improve that area.
And do you categorize your life into different areas? So whether it be something specifically for work or finance or health or whatever?
I do. Yep. So each action has an action category. So it's either a finance activity, or it's a marketing activity, or it's a sales activity, or it's an operations activity. So all of them are, depending on the functional area of my business.
And then do you have a kind of, this is another question, because I think a lot of people, when they first get into goal setting, I've definitely fallen foul of this. You suddenly write loads of stuff. You think, oh, look at all of the time in a week. I'm going to write all of these things down. And then you never get any of it done, because what you thought was going to take 10 minutes takes 4 hours. And so how do you manage that? How do you manage your own expectations through what you can achieve in a week or a month or longer?
Yep, I think it's a process. You get to know yourself. Like, I know if it has anything to do with writing, it's going to take me longer, because that's not my favorite thing to do, right? But if it's like editing a podcast, and I'm allotting an hour, I know I could get that done in an hour. But over time, you know yourself. Mm-hmm. So again, I know that depending on the task, the time I think is going to take, to just double it. Like if it's writing show notes, for example, yep. Again, not my favorite thing to do. So if I think that it's going to take about 30 minutes, I just allot an hour, because I'll get distracted and I'll go do some other things, and I know that it's going to take.
Very familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've definitely learned that writing isn't my favorite thing to do either.
Yep.
But you can't avoid it most of the time. You need to do some, and if anything, it's probably good to go through some of the pain, because as you go through the pain, you get better and you will become quicker.
Yep.
And I would second also that if it's something you're learning, say you're working on a skill or something like that, I've definitely found allow extra time for what you think, because you want to have the time to be able to read and digest and actually think it through, rather than, well, I'm just going to do an hour. It's very hard to pick stuff up in just an hour. school's testament to that, right? You change
Yes.
lessons every hour, and you can't remember anything that
Yep.
you learned at the start of the day.
Yep. I think it's important too that to give yourself time to rest and to take a walk. Like most of the tasks that I'm assigning myself, I do it at 45-minute intervals. So that gives me some time to kind of decompress, to think about something other than work. And now it's still nice out here in Wisconsin. So, I'll go for a walk around the office, or go talk to a human being, or something other than staring at my computer. So, so I think again, just knowing yourself. Some people, they can go an hour and 45 minutes and be just fine. Me, I know it takes me about 45 minutes, and then I'm ready for a mental break. So it's important to know yourself.
Yeah, it is, and also not be too rigid, I guess. If you're in the flow, and whatever you're doing, you're enjoying it, and you feel energized, keep going. If you don't, it's probably a sign to give it a rest and try something else for a little while.
Yep.
I'm like you. If I end up stuck in something I'm not massively enjoying, I can distract myself pretty easily. It's really difficult. Mm-hmm. So when you've been running, since you've started the podcast and you had interviewing all of these different people, and the original purpose of interviewing entrepreneurs and having these conversations, what are some of the key lessons you've learned, themes that you picked up from the different conversations that you've had?
Man, that is a loaded question. I have a manila folder full of my notes. I could write a book. So how do I distill that down to one or two? Wow. I think one of the
are there key themes that you see from people with, they've reached depending on where they are on their own particular entrepreneurial journey, the things that have kind of, they all do that kind of thing. And
yeah, one of the themes is a daily routine. I found that a lot of successful people have a daily routine. It's a thing or things that they do every single day, and they keep to that schedule. The other thing that is kind of a theme is, and we talked a little bit about it, was adaptability. Understanding the market, understanding what the market needs, not what you think it needs, but what it actually needs, and understanding how to get that need to the market. In essence, that is entrepreneurship, is being able to read the market. What does the market need, and how do you give the market what it needs? So that adaptability and really understanding the market will be one of the other themes. The other thing that I've noticed with what I call successful business owners is the passion. They're passionate about not only the thing, but the process of the thing. I'm a big journey guy. Like, winning a championship, if I'm a basketball player, is awesome. But for me, it's the journey to get there. That's the whole game. The end result is fine. Obviously we all want to win the championship, the proverbial championship. But it's the journey that I found that a lot of the entrepreneurs that I talk to, that's the game. They love the journey. They love the process of entrepreneurship.
It's interesting you say that, because since I've been doing this and different things I read and people that I've spoken to, I've definitely picked up on 100% that that's one of the defining factors, is when you start to analyze people, go to the right pinnacle of successful business, and people like Jeff Bezos. There is no end goal. It is all journey. Every single thing is the journey. And I think we, for whatever reason, it's probably through school, again, competition is all about the result, and so we try to avoid the journey, and we're always trying to find, how do we shortcut the journey? You think about how many posts and things like this hack to basically get around. I don't think you can truly shortcut the journey, and if you do it falls down at the other end, or you find that the goal isn't as fulfilling as you thought it might be. So yeah, I second that journey, and it's a great reminder, because when you're having a day where you feel like you're not getting anywhere, to remember that that's the point. It's quite helpful. It makes the discomfort more enjoyable.
Yeah, and that is life, right? I mean,
100%. Yeah.
nobody knows what the end of this looks like.
No.
Like nobody's come back and said, "Oh, when you die, here's what happens."
Yeah.
No, I mean, some people think they know, right? I hope I know. Well, you don't know.
No one
So
knows. Yeah.
you should probably enjoy the journey, right? You don't know what the prize is.
This is very true. I love that analogy. I think we too spend so much so much of our lives looking into a point in the future or a point in the past, and missing what's going on now. And I think that's why, as we grow older, God, the years go faster. It's probably because we're not looking at the one we're in.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. So, talk about you now, as we mentioned earlier, kind of moving into the rebrand and kind of helping other people start podcasts. And if someone's listening to this now and maybe they're an entrepreneur and they think, oh, actually, a podcast would be good for my business, or maybe it's just somebody who wants to start a business. How do you go about helping someone get started?
That's an interesting question. I kind of start the same way I start with setting my goals. We start with the end in mind. What is the goal? And then we work our way backwards, right? So everything down to the format of the show is all informed by what that goal is. For some people, they just want the experience of meeting people. Okay, great. So we'll set you up with an interview show. We'll help you set up, a format that works for that. We'll help you set up a checklist so that here's how you reach out to the people. Here's how you orient them in. Here's how you set up your scheduling system, XYZ. For people who are running brands, who it's more of a business result. Again, we kind of set up the end goal and then work our way backwards.
And you help them with understanding the production and all of the technical kind of elements. How do you help them with that?
Yep, it depends on the person. Excuse me. Some people don't want to touch the tech with a 10-foot pole. So they come to me and say, hey, Elzie, I don't want to understand that stuff. You take care of it, and I'll just do the interview. But there's some people who it's more of a done with you, where they want to understand the tech, or they want to understand how to edit. And we work with people where they are. If you're a complete DIY, you want us to teach you the A to Z, we can do that. Or if you're completely done for you, you don't want to do anything, we can serve you that way as well.
And how's that changed in recent times? I assume that throughout a period of the last 6 months at least, more of what you've been doing has been remote than maybe you'd done before. How have you had to adapt?
Yeah, this year, March, was different for the brand, because a lot of my marketing and outreach was shaking hands and kissing babies. That's what I do. That's why people call me the mayor of Podcast Town, because I'm shaking hands and kissing babies. That's what I do. And how do you move your business forward when you can't shake hands or kiss babies, right? And so we had to adjust. There was a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of remote production sessions. It's a lot of remote training. We launched the group program that I was telling you about earlier, where I'm coaching people in a social media type platform. So they're asking questions of the group, and I'm on there, and I'm answering questions. I'm giving guidance. We have weekly Zoom calls where we're talking about our challenges and helping each other work through those. So to answer your question, I mean, everything had to go virtual. It just had to, because more people couldn't come face to face. That's changing slowly now, where I have some clients who are coming into the studio in person now, which is great because I get to actually see human beings again. So I'm seeing a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of being able to shake hands. Maybe not kiss babies for a while. Maybe the end of next year.
Kissing's out the question for a while. You could just
kissing babies probably.
Fist bumps and elbow nudges.
Yes.
The world's gone mad. Yeah, was it? And as productions, from a production perspective, you were doing the done for. I assume a lot of that was, like you were saying, people coming into the studio, record, and then you can produce it for them. And then how does it work? How's it worked for those kind of customers who can't come to the studio?
Yeah, for those, what we do is we help them with the tech side of things. And thankfully, you don't need a ton now to have a solid, high quality program. So basically, we just work with them on where they are. Maybe they need a USB microphone. Maybe they need a little bit more. And I'm typically on the phone with them, kind of in the background as they're kind of working through the tech, making sure they have everything they need so that they can just show up and perform and not have to worry about anything else.
Because it must be quite challenging. It must be quite frustrating and challenging from your own perspective. You're so used to be able to deliver one type of service, to be able to evolve and make sure that your customers still feel like they're getting the same level of service from a remote location.
Yeah. And again, it's been 6 or 7 months now, so we're kind of super in that groove now. Yeah. So and just when you think that it's, you're in your groove, it'll go back to the to before. It's like, okay, it keeps you on your toes for sure.
Yeah, what's the slow adaptation back been like?
It's been strange. I don't know if I can think of any other word for it, because it's just weird to not be able to engage people in person. It's just, I've never experienced anything like this where, you meet somebody and you don't know whether to shake their hand or give them an elbow. It's like, it's just weird, and all the cleaning every time, we have a guest in the studio. I wipe everything down and, clean everything. And I had a guest come in once and he's choking from the fumes of the cleaning. He's like, man, what did you do in here? But that's the world that we live in. You want to make sure that you're doing your part to keep everybody safe. So it's just strange.
It's a very, very weird time, but hopefully at some point we'll get back to some level of normality, whatever that means for us. But yeah, it would be nice to not have that awkward even with people and you haven't seen for a while. It's kind of like, now what do we do? Because some people are quite comfortable, some people are not comfortable, and there's a complete unknown until somebody says it's okay again, which could be a while. I think we're going to be living in a funny old world. Before we go on to some of the standard questions, are there any other key, from all the conversations that you have, from your own experiences, if there's somebody who's looking to go on either an entrepreneurial journey or, like I said before, like starting a podcast, what advice would you give to that person? If it's the younger version of you starting out again, what are the, top 5, 10 things, whatever it is, that you would recommend people consider, or lessons to take on board?
I always tell people, make sure that you understand why you're doing it. I mean, that could be starting a business, that could be starting a podcast, that could be a relationship. Really understand why, because your why is going to carry you through when it gets hard, and it will get hard. I think the other thing, again, adaptability, and being nimble. Keep your costs down as much as humanly possible. Be open to it looking different than you thought it would look. Oftentimes, where you end up looks nothing like where you thought it. It feels nothing like you thought it would feel. It feels different. I would say also study. Make sure that you're getting people in your life, whether that's a coach or a mentor, or somebody who can look at your business, your podcast, whatever it is, objectively, and can help you identify blind spots. We all have them, and I know for some people it's hard to admit, but we all have them, blind spots, the things that we don't see, that your coach can help you identify. I think having a coach will help you grow faster, and it'll help you grow more efficiently. It's an investment, but it's definitely worth it. So those would be my top things. And I would say enjoy the ride. It goes by so fast. Like 2016-ish when I started Enterprise. Now it's 2020, the end of 2020, and it's just gone by so fast. And to see the brand where it is now with Podcast Town, you couldn't have told me when I started that this is where we would be. So just enjoy it. Just enjoy the moment and live in the moment.
That is great advice. I think we discussed this already, but too often do we miss what's right in front of us now and enjoying where we are and what we're trying to do, and the growth that comes from challenge, right? So yeah, really, really good. So I have a few standard questions that I'm going to fire at you and get your take. So you kind of covered this through the conversation that you had with other people and about routine. Do you have a morning routine of your own? And if you do, what does it look like? You're talking to me bloody early at the moment, so that must be messing some of your routine up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm still crafting it. It's kind of half developed, but I like to be up by 6 a.m. at least. Like that's as late as I like to wake up. And I'm a big person of faith. So for me, it's every day making sure that I'm praying, that I'm centering, that I'm appreciating the sunshine, right? I know that sounds woo-woo, but but I think the simpler you can make life and things, the easier it is to enjoy it, right? And not complicate it so much that it's hard to enjoy it. Like I literally enjoy feeling the sun on my skin, right? The most simplistic thing. And making sure that I'm reading God's word and making sure that I'm that relationship is on point and intact. And then what I do is I kind of look at my day, what I have coming up, and I'm really, again, just centering and making sure that I'm in the moment and enjoying everything. But that's right now, that's it. What I need to add to that morning routine is exercise, but I'm working on it. This is a work in progress.
I think I tend to exercise kind of more mid-morning. So I get up and I do I get kind of organized and do the meditation and all that, kind of similar to yourself. And then I've definitely found that I want to do a bit of work and then do some exercise. I've tried the exercise straight away, and it can. I just find that it takes me so long then between waking up and actually getting something done. It seems to take forever, and I'm wishing the exercise or the meditation or something else away. So I'm experimenting with a mid-morning exercise.
Got it. Can I add one thing to my advice for people? You made a good point in your statement just now. Knowing yourself is probably, oh my goodness, it is the whole game. You know, you can look at somebody else and what they do and how they do it, but you really have to understand what works for you. So just want to add that in there.
100%. Yeah, I think, and that's that you do have to take the time to experiment. And you know, one of the reasons for asking this question is because there's quite a variety of ways in which people start the day. What you always see online is, you've got to be up at 5 a.m., you've got to run a marathon, you've got to do all of these kind of things. And actually, lots of people start in a different way. But what is consistent is most people have a deliberate morning. And then it's working out, okay, well, deliberate morning seems to be a good idea. How do other people do it? And what could I possibly take from there and try it and see if it works for me? Because there are a million different ways of starting your day, right? So it's good to get the insight of different people.
Yep.
3 books that you'd recommend and why?
I love the E-Myth because it really breaks
that now, yeah.
Yes, it really breaks down what I think is probably the reason why a lot of businesses fail is because they're trying to be the technician, they're trying to be the manager, they're trying to be all of the things, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, self awareness. You know, you got to know, am I the technician? Am I the manager? Who am I, right? And really apply that to their business. The other one is Who Moved My Cheese. I love that one because it really helps with focus and really just paying attention and being aware of your surroundings and your business and being objective and understanding what is actually happening. Not what you think is happening, what you feel is happening, what's actually happening, and paying attention. And the last one is What the Heck is EOS? By Gino Wickman. This book changed my life professionally. It gave me the structure around how do you run an organization operationally. That series, he has a series. It's the entrepreneur. Forgot what the EOS stands for, but it's basically a system of how to operate and run your business. And I adopted that and love it.
I'm going to look that up. I've never heard that book. Never heard of that book. So good recommendation. 3 people that you either follow or listen to that you recommend people checking out. It could be a podcast. It could be social channel. It could be anything.
3 people, or I like Gary V. I like the way he sees the world. I don't follow a ton of people just because I tend to be the kind of person that I think independently. So I don't seek out, hey, I wonder what so-and-so thinks. I don't really care. I'm kind of just marching by the beat of my own drum, in my own life experience. But Gary Vee is one of the people who the way he thinks aligns with how I think. It's like he always tells people you're going to die, right? Like it's the journey again. And like I said before, we don't know what the end looks like. Like we don't know when the end's coming and we don't know what it looks like. So you probably should enjoy the journey now. And he, a lot of the things that he teaches kind of, aligns with that. The other person, and I don't necessarily follow him, but Richard Branson is one of those entrepreneurs that really inspire me. It's like he started a gazillion companies, and he's just, again, you talk about adaptability, and knowing yourself and enjoying the journey. I mean, he embodies all of those things.
Yeah, he does. I've always followed Richard for a long time, partly because when I grew up, he was quite a PR face for all of his businesses. He was always trying to fly a hot air balloon around the world or race a boat across the Pacific or something ridiculous all of the time. And so that was kind of, he was obviously a household name and a British guy. So one of the few. most of the big entrepreneurs tend to come from the States. I'll let you off on 2 for that one.
Okay, thank you.
3 good habits or disciplines that you've adopted into your life that you think have kind of made the difference or made a difference to you.
Yep. Prayer for sure. Number 1. I would say belief in myself and getting coaching. Mm-hmm. Those are the game changers for sure.
I think all of those are underutilized and underrated.
Yep.
You got to start digging into that stuff. 3 tools or systems, apps, softwares, whatever you want to call them, but 3 things that you use all of the time now that you couldn't live without.
Yep. I live by my calendar. Literally.
Say that to me, yeah.
Literally. So Schedule Once is my calendar software. David, I don't know where I would be if I had to go back and forth with emails. What about Friday at 1? No, that doesn't work for me. How about Thursday at 2? It just drives me crazy, just the thought of it. Now I can just send out my link. Here are the times I'm available. Pick a time that works for you. Done. It automatically sends a reminder.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love it. The other thing that I love is when it first came out, I bought the Rodecaster Pro board. David, this is the best board ever. They thought of everything. I used to have 3 or 4 different pieces of equipment when I would go to do on-site recording. I would have to have my headphone app that was separate. amp that was separate. I had my mixer, which was again separate. Then I had the microphones and all the different stuff. So at the end of the day, there were like 3 or 4 different pieces of equipment that I would have to plug in, set up, sound check, and all that good stuff. The Rodecaster Pro, I plug it in, I turn it on, and everything that I need is right there in that one unit. It just saves me a ton of time. I standardize around, when I'm recommending to clients. I absolutely love that piece of equipment. The third thing that I use tool is Canva. It is a game changer. It helps me when I'm doing any of my graphics, tweetables, social cards, all that stuff. I'm always in Canva.
Yeah, I think there's very few people that I ever speak to that don't live in Canva these days. And just one simple feature, like their smart background remover, is unbelievably good.
Yep.
It's way better than most other tools that remove in backgrounds. So, yeah, if you're not using Canva already, you're way behind.
Yeah, and it's cost effective.
Yeah, it is. It's super good value, and why wouldn't you use it? So the last question is, if you had an hour with anybody, dead or alive, who would that one person be?
Whew, that's a really good question. Who? I would say Malcolm X, and I would want to know. He talk about going against the grain, mm-hmm. right? And just being dead on with his evaluation of everything. I would just want to observe. I mean, I don't know that I would ask him, or I could muster up the courage to ask him a question, but I would just want to observe how he, exists, and just kind of sit back and just watch how he interprets and expresses life. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I would be able to ask a good question. My question probably wouldn't sound like a cohesive thought, but I would just want to observe and just kind of watch him in action.
I think it'd be interesting if someone like him were around today, with everything that's going on, with the virus, with the Black Lives Matter stuff, with everything that's happening, to see someone, 50 years on, 40 years on from when he was killed, to now to see what his take would be, I think, fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I often wonder, you look at that era, a lot of the guys and women who were at the forefront, they would be in their 70s or 80s now, and I often wonder how would they view the progress? Like, have we made progress? Are we in the same place? And I often wonder what they would think about where we are today.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I was watching a couple of months ago. I was watching an Muhammad Ali documentary, and obviously he was close with Malcolm X and stuff. And I was back then thinking, you watch what Muhammad Ali was talking about at the time, and you think, yeah, we've made some progress, and then in other areas you think, have we gone backwards? And I would just be fascinated to see their take on it all. Right, before we disappear, where can people find out more about you, Podcast Town, Enterprise Now, if they still want to dig into that? Where can people find out more?
The best place would be the website, podcasttown.net, or you can email me at mayor@podcasttown.net, nice. Or you can give me a call, 262-278-0535.
I love the email address.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Elzie, it's been amazing. Thank you very much for giving up your time.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
No, it's been great. Thanks. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and you'd like to hear more similar episodes, head over to pocketmastermind.com, where you'll also find the links mentioned in this conversation. And if you haven't done so already, please leave us a review. It will really help us to get our message out and let more people know about these episodes. So leave us a review, leave us a rating, hit the subscribe button, and please share with your friends. Until next time, thank you again for listening.